If you are over 40 and you have been trying to build your glutes or you're interested in building your glutes, this is the podcast episode for you. Let's take a step back. For those of you that are new here, my name is Diane Flores. I've been in the health and fitness space for over 17 years. I'm an IFBB bodybuilding pro, which also makes me a professional dieter. And I'm a personal trainer, I'm a health coach, and I have been tracking macros and calories for a very long time. I've been 200 pounds. I have professionally dieted my whole professional bodybuilding life. I've gained weight, I've lost weight, I've been shredded, I have been obsessive, I've hated my body, I now love my body. I've had unhealthy eating behaviors and everything in between. This is going to be one of many in a series that I call Booty Building Breakthroughs. And this is to provide you with some information around building your glutes, because we all want some nice, firm, juicy peaches, don't we? And I am doing this series through the month of August, particularly, and it might go longer. I'm not going to lie. I have a ton of topics for glute building because we are doing our 7-day Glute Goddess Challenge, which is a free 7-day challenge. Listen, I'm not going to tell you you're going to get crazy results in 7 days. That's not what it's about. This is to actually teach you what it takes to grow your glutes. So within this challenge, you'll get 3 training programs to execute at the gym loaded in my app, as well as some cardio instructions and assignments. And every day you go in to the app, you check off what you do. You can track your weights. And in the challenge, I will be doing a Facebook Live in the group every day of the challenge, going over different sort of hurdles, obstacles, nutrition topics, and things of that nature with everybody who's in the challenge. Now, earlier this year, we had 200 women that enrolled in the Glute Goddess Challenge. This year, I imagine that number is going to be double because my following has grown thanks to a lot of you on Instagram and obviously here on the YouTubes. And it's going to be fantastic. So I don't want you to miss it. It starts August the 26th. If you are listening to this after, still go to visit bossbitchradio.com. And at the top, it says work with me. Pull that down. It says the Glute Goddess Challenge. Put yourself on the wait list because we will do it again, but not until next year. And you're not going to want to miss it. Okay. It is a great time, lots of fun. And the girls loved the results once they did it themselves, like for many, many weeks. Okay. Let's get into the meat and potatoes, shall we? Our agenda today for this podcast, I'm going to be talking about why it is important to focus on your glutes when you're over 40, besides the aesthetic reasons. You know what I mean? Some considerations that are often overlooked for those of us that are over 40. Some key areas that you're going to want to focus on in the process of attempting to build your glutes. And then lastly, some practical tips for you to take away and actually start doing the damn thing, right? This is what it's about. Don't just listen and do nothing. Listen and do something, right? Let's move closer to those sculpted glutes. All right. First is why focus on your glutes when you're over 40. Let's talk about the glutes in general, and then this will all make sense to you. Now, the glutes are made up of 3 muscles. There is the glute med, the glute min, and the glute max. Min, max, minimus, maximus, you get the idea. So there's 3 muscles that create the juicy peaches. All right. Now let's break down a little bit each one of these muscles in the glute complex. Okay. So you have the glute max. That is the largest muscle. Then you have the minimus, the glute minimus, which oftentimes is going to be that deeper muscle. It's very, very small. And then the medius is the upper booty shelf muscle, right? So, girls, if you're a bikini competitor and you're working on your glutes, or wellness girl, you know how important it is to be working that booty shelf, right? You got to give that glute the entire shape. Where people miss the mark is that when they say they did glutes, they usually do like 1 exercise, maybe 2, and maybe just once a week. And that's quite frankly not enough. It is better than nothing, but if you really want to see some change, especially if you're over 40, we're going to talk about what that looks like. Now, when it comes to why focusing on your glutes, specifically when you're over 40, a lot of us are starting to enter that premenopause. And those of you that are over 40 in your 50s and 60s, in that menopause era. It is very important that when you start to age, that you focus on retaining as much muscle mass as you can. And we'll go into that in a little bit as well. But one of the ways in which to stay lean is to work your glutes, because your glutes, particularly your glute max, is the largest muscle group in your body, right? So if you think about that from an energy standpoint, in terms of energy balance in energy out, energy in being your caloric intake, AKA your diet, and energy out being your training and your activity, the glute max is going to require a lot more energy to be sustained and to also grow. So when you train your glutes, you're actually training a muscle group that is going to be expending more calories, or help you expend more calories when you're at rest, just doing nothing, right? So me just sitting here podcasting with you, I'm burning more calories than the average 46-year-old that doesn't train their glutes. So I can then afford to eat more food because my body needs more food to sustain that muscle. So that is one of the main reasons why we want to focus on our glutes, particularly over 40, but in general. The second reason is that as we age, we know we start to have little aches and pains and things of that nature. And your glutes actually help in terms of protecting your knees, stabilizing your hips, which also protects your knees and your ankle joints and all the lower body important things, tendons, joints, muscles, all of that, right? So this is important because as we age, those things start to deteriorate. And if you have strong glutes, then you're likely going to have a stronger lower body complex overall. The third thing is it protects your low back. This is one of the main reasons why I love glute training so much, aside from the results, is I've always been perplexed and plagued with some lower back stuff. And obviously, lots of women over 40 and just in general tend to have some kind of low back issue from time to time. Mine is a bit more chronic. And I find that I can train glutes 3, sometimes 4 times a week. And my low back, fine, not irritated, not pissed off. It's great. So training your glutes is going to allow for better hip movement, hip stability, all of those things. So by nature of having stronger glutes, your low back will also likely be strengthened in the process. Number 4, I already touched on this, but the glutes, like I said, they expend the most energy at rest. So post-workout and just in general, the glutes, they use the most energy. So this is why you want to train them. You want to grow them. You want to develop them. So that way, again, just back to what I was saying, we can have a leaner overall aesthetic with your physique. Which overall, even if you're not interested in having a leaner body in general, it's going to help in terms of health and longevity, right? So more muscle mass versus fat mass is just proven that you're likely going to be a healthier human being. And then the last reason, and my favorite reason, is that when you prioritize your glutes, it is aesthetically pleasing. Well, at least to me, and I guess that's subjective. Okay, now let's move on. We're going to talk about some considerations as far as what I want you to think about as you are aging, right? Even those of you that aren't 40, these things will apply to you at some point. So it's kind of good for you to just have a little bit of insight right now. Now, one of the things that happens as we age, one of the many things, is that our muscle mass decreases. So as we age, every decade, studies show that you lose about 8% of your muscle mass every decade. That's a lot. Now, there's a fancy term for this. It's called sarcopenia. Basically, it is age-related muscle loss. What will tend to happen is you will see your muscles start to decrease in size, in shape, in strength. All of those things will start to decline as you age. Now, if you are incorporating resistance training, strength training, AKA training with weights, the likelihood of this happening at a rapid pace is a lot lower. The second thing to consider, and is probably one of the most important things that I'm going to talk to you about today, is hormones. Hormones are a motherfucking bitch. And when you're trying to get a sexy body and build your glutes, as you age, your hormones are going to be doing some shit that's going to try to stop you from achieving your sexy back. Okay. So what you have to understand about estrogen is that it also plays a role in muscular development. Another hormone that plays a huge role is testosterone. And a lot of women don't realize that we, as women, have testosterone. We have natural levels of our own testosterone, clearly not as much as our male counterparts. However, as we age, testosterone will also decline along with estrogen. You have the decreased testosterone, you have the decreased estrogen, and this, my friends, contributes to strength loss and muscle loss as we age. And this is another reason why, side note, I'm a huge advocate for hormonal therapy. It's not for everybody. Not everybody agrees with me. That's okay. Have your opinions. But I do personally know that it's amazing. And my clients, a lot of my clients do too. All right. So when you start to age, the estrogen obviously plays a huge role, specifically in muscle protein synthesis. And when your estrogen drops, this process slows way down. And that is going to make it way harder to build and maintain muscle. The same thing happens with testosterone. That declines, which also naturally will bring down your ability to put on muscle and keep the muscle that you have. All right, let's go into insulin sensitivity. How effective is your body at responding to insulin? So insulin is clearly going to help regulate your blood sugar. Now, when you're menopausal, what tends to happen with the hormonal changes is they greatly affect insulin, which a lot of people don't realize insulin is actually a hormone. When insulin is affected, this is also going to decrease your estrogen. It is going to increase your belly fat. If I had $1 for every woman that was like, help me with this menopause belly, like I would be a fucking millionaire. So this all together, the decreased estrogen, testosterone, the insulin sensitivity issues will lead to muscle loss. How, you ask? Well, when your food, AKA your fuel, which ends up being this burst of insulin a lot of times that comes into your body, when it's used less effectively, the insulin is not shuttling the nutrients properly, okay? So when you have this insulin sensitivity that has been altered due to age, you tend to not repair as well. You won't grow as well because the insulin sensitivity is skewed. And so it's not going to shuttle the nutrients appropriately to where it needs to go, where they need to go. So this is also a huge issue when it comes to women over 40 who are training and they are dealing with the increased belly fat and, the lack of strength, and they start to notice things are sagging and falling, and maybe they haven't been weight training. And so you have this kind of whole cascade of things that are happening at once that can be incredibly overwhelming and disheartening, especially if you are in the gym and you're trying to train and you're eating a pretty good diet and you're just like, what is happening, right? So a lot of this, good news, is naturally improved by a few things. The first thing being strength training. With strength training, you're going to be building muscle, right? You're going to be building mass, ideally. That is the goal. When you're over 40, again, testosterone is declining, estrogen's declining, insulin sensitivity is affected. So one thing you can do is start strength training if you're not already. Now, this is going to help your muscles take up glucose from your bloodstream, which is what you want. You want that to happen. So if you start getting in the gym, you start lifting some weights, these are some ways to naturally improve. And I don't want to say like reverse the signs of menopause or aging, but let me tell you, I have a client or 2 or 10 where you're like, hey, are you the next Benjamin Button? What's happening here? They're reverse aging. And also by way of strength training, you're also going to boost your metabolism. And if you know anything about metabolism, you're going to know this is what is going to help regulate your blood sugar, which is, again, something that is not paid enough attention to in mainstream media and just fitness in general, is regulating your blood sugar. Strength training does also help with that. So boosting the metabolism naturally by way of strength training is going to be huge to help combat some of these things as we age. All right. The other thing to consider when you're over 40 is that recovery is much different than when you're a spring chicken, let me tell you. You are going to need more time for recovery, and also you're going to need to be a little more cautious when it comes to overtraining. Now, this can be an entirely different episode on its own, and I likely will dive into that at some point. I have become very interested in heart rate training. Heart rate training is something that is a little bit, I don't want to say next level, but it is something that I have been delving into a lot in the last year. I want to make sure that I'm not overtraining. I want to make sure that I'm not overstressing my body, so that way the next day I feel good and I can get back in the gym. So if you are noticing that you're having a hard time with recovery, you just feel like after a leg day or a glute day, the next day you're just like beat up and struggling to get back in the gym for a couple days, you might want to take a look at your heart rate while you're training. If you're also doing cardio, is your heart rate too high? So something I would suggest, and was not meant to be a part of this podcast, but go and look at what your heart rates should be for your goals. So just a simple Google. And I like to have my clients train within zone 2 cardio, and that is going to be different dependent on your age. More is not better. And what I mean by that is we get trapped into thinking, oh, well, if my heart rate beats faster, I'm burning more calories, which indeed is correct. However, if that is coming at the sake of your recovery, it's not worth it. So train within your heart rate zones, especially over 40. Do not try to be training like you're in your 20s if you want to do this and feel good and have some longevity in it, because you will eventually wear yourself out, right? Listen, I like to think I'm a spry 30. I feel like internally like I'm 35, but I also know that I don't let my ego get ahead of me. And so I follow these principles, and it has been working fantastically. And this is how we coach our clients as well. Over 40 baddies, trying to build your glutes. Maybe you're going through your premenopausal, you're in menopause, whatever. Here are some key focus areas that I want you to think about when it comes to your strength training, but specifically for this conversation, the glutes, okay? Progressive overload. Fancy word for saying the shit needs to feel hard when you go in and train. If it feels easy every time and you're kind of just going through the motions and you're not paying attention to how much you're lifting, then you can't expect much from your body in terms of changing, right? You'll likely stay the same, which if that's your goal, great. But if you are wanting to actually really see some physical change and also feel better and feel stronger and build some muscle, you have to challenge your muscles appropriately. And what that looks like is gradually with each week when you do the program, or you do a program and you repeat it, your goal is to just add a little bit more weight. This can be 5 pounds. This could be, if you're doing an upper body workout and you're doing shoulders, it could be 2 pounds, right? Just constantly trying to push yourself a little bit more in each session if you feel like your body can handle it, right? You're recovered enough and you can do so. The other way that you can do this is with volume. So maybe you add on another training day with a few more sets of a body part in there, right? So this is progressively overloading that muscle in terms of frequency and volume, how many sets you're doing. And this is where you're going to notice the change. You're going to notice more change when you start using and utilizing a proper training program that doesn't have you beat up after one workout to where you can't go in a couple days and do it again. Like, yes, if you haven't trained for a minute, you're going to be sore, friend. But that should not be the theme, 4 weeks in, 3 weeks into a program. Even with progressive overload, you might notice yourself a little bit more sore the next day, but soreness isn't always an indicator that shit's working. Okay. Just FYI. The second key area that you want to focus in on is your nutrition, right? Can't say this enough. I probably have at least over 100 episodes on the podcast talking about nutrition when it comes to fat loss, training, muscle gain, all that fun stuff. But you are going to need enough protein. And a lot of my over 40 baddies are not consuming enough protein. And that is going to impair your ability to build muscle. If you're not eating enough protein, that means that you're not properly recovering and rebuilding from the damage that you created in the gym. Because it's essentially what you're doing in a very broad sense of the topic. Okay. So protein, super important. And then obviously we have the other macros, carbs and fat, and those also need to be tailored appropriately for your goals, which is impossible for me to give you just, a broad do this kind of marching orders. The third thing, and if I lost you, please come back to me because this is very, very important, is your mobility and your flexibility. Specifically, as we age, these things get worse. And if you neglect them and then you try to get in the gym and you aren't actually incorporating some kind of dynamic mobility warm-ups and then maybe some static stretches post-training, those sessions are going to become harder and harder because your body is going to essentially freeze like the Tin Man. And if you're over 40, you know who the motherfucking Tin Man is, okay? This is a problem. This is a problem I see with a lot of women over 40, specifically women who have been training for a while and they're kind of just like in a groove and they just have the routine down and they just don't want to allocate 5 to 10 more minutes to dealing with any of this stuff, especially because it's not the fun thing, right? It's not the like, let me go see how much weight I can lift or how much, I can hip thrust. It's get on the floor, move through all of your aches and pains, move through all of your ranges of motion, make sure that you are kind of like priming yourself, right? I do this every single workout. And it is huge when it comes to changing the shape of your body, because if you do not have the capacity to get into certain ranges of motion, you have no business doing that particular exercise with weight until you can actually execute that in the proper range of motion, AKA your form is going to suck. And so I see it with, we catch it at the studio and at my training studio. And that's things that we will work on. We will have girls back off the weight, sort of work into some ranges of motion during our mobility and warm up piece of the hour. But this is something that's super important. Now, one thing I want to mention is dynamic mobility warm-ups. Okay. This does not mean you need to like do burpees and jumping jacks and, a bunch of shit. It's like take all of your joints and move them through their range of motion, at least the ones that you know of. Okay. Starting from your head all the way down to your feet, your ankles. And I run through this whole mobility routine in about 5 minutes and it gets my heart rate up a little bit. It works through dynamic stretches. So they're going through, I'm going through that full range of motion. If I'm doing a glute day, which let's be real, that's most of the days that I do in the gym, I will make sure that I'm going through the same movement patterns that I'm about to go through with a machine. So today I had Smith machine lunges. So in my warm up, I did some body weighted reverse lunges. I'm kind of feeling out my body. How do my joints feel today? How do my hips feel? Am I connecting with the muscles? Am I feeling what needs to be working here? Super important. And that's why I'm getting incredibly passionate about it. So the other reason why you want to do dynamic stretching versus static stretching. So dynamic, think of like you're moving, right? You're moving through that range of motion. It's not like, oh, I'm going to hold this stretch right here. That's a static stretch. That's not what you want to do pre-training. This is the shit you want to do at the end, right? So the classic like grab your foot and pull it towards your butt, like back in PE days, and stretch out your thigh muscle or your quad. That's stuff you want to save for the end. When you do that pre-training, you actually can create some issues. And I don't know the exact dynamics of it. I wish I did for you, but it has been proven to actually increase your risk of injury. So we don't do static stretching. We do dynamic stretching. Then we save static for the end of your workout, okay, where you're holding some deep stretches and the work has already been done. Now, the reason why, again, this is important besides increasing your range of motion is with age, our joints naturally wear down. I don't know if any of y'all feel this, but like I know my knees are a little more sensitive and delicate than they were 5 years ago. My wrists, my elbows, all those things. Now, those things are going to wear down and your muscles and your tendons become a lot less malleable, a lot less flexible. So getting some blood flow, getting some movement, really getting within those ranges of motion are going to help you significantly, not only for your quality of life, like just getting up and off the couch is important, but also in your training, and it will transfer over to your results that you get in the gym. Another key focus area for you, and is obviously my jam, I love that shit, is strength training. Now, when it comes to building muscle over 40, and we talked already exhaustively about how hormones are going to be working against us, right? They're not going to be working generally in our favor when it comes to muscle growth and muscle development and building your glutes or sculpting your legs, whatever you want to call it. But strength training is a huge piece of bringing that all back to life. Now, when it comes to strength training, friends, hear me out. Unless you have an injury, we need to be lifting weights heavier than our purse, okay? I know. I said it. I called you on your shit. But I know your purse, bitch, I know your purse has all kinds of shit in it. It probably weighs at least 5 to 8 pounds, okay? If you are not able to lift 5 to 8 pounds because maybe you are very deconditioned and maybe you've had some health issues, I'm not talking to that population. I'm talking to my over 40 baddies who are just like, I've just been doing life and now I need to get back to me and I need to know how to do it the right way. Compound movements within your strength training are super important if you want to build and grow your glutes, your lower body. Okay. Now, what is a compound movement, you ask? Think about things like squats with weight, lunges, body weight at first until you master it. Perfect. Then we want to start adding some weight to that. Deadlifts. Those are big compounds. They move multiple joints in order for you to execute that exercise, right? You think of a squat, you're moving your knee joint, you're moving your hip joint, right? So there's a lot of joints moving, which means you're going to recruit a lot more muscle. We want that. We want to have these big compounds be the foundation of our program when it comes to our lower body training. Then we have the other important types of exercises that fall more along the line of isolation exercises or focus on one specific muscle versus something like a compound that is going to hit maybe 3, right? Like in a squat, you're going to hit your quads, you're going to hit your glutes, and you're going to hit a little bit of hamstrings. You're going to hit your core. It's more taxing on your system. The isolations are going to be less taxing on your system, but don't let that fool you. They're not easier. So we're thinking things like hip thrust. That's a isolation movement, right? And we also have bridges. So, and that's not the exhaustive list, but just to give you an idea, you're going to want to incorporate these things into your training. So that's the 4th piece of it. And then the 5th piece, which we talked about already a little bit, which is recovery. Now, there's some things I want to chat with you about here. Okay. Sleep. Sleep is where the magic happens. You beat your body down in the gym with your training. You eat your food during the day. This is going to help foster the environment needed for recovery and repair, which ultimately means you're building muscle. Okay. That's all going to happen when you lay your head down at night and go memes. Okay. The sleep is super important. That's where the magic happens. Then we have hydration, drinking enough water. Your muscle cells are made mostly of water. It is key for your muscles to grow that they have some hydration. This is going to help shuttle all the nutrients where they need to go as well. So making sure that you're hydrated is super important. That's going to help with recovery. Then we have some things you can do for active recovery. So things like getting in some extra steps, getting in some yoga, maybe doing some light cardio. Things that aren't going to drill your body down even further when you're trying to recover. Then the last thing I will say, and I use supplements sparingly in a lot of my conversations because I don't want people to flock to that and think that that's the answer. This is something that's going to help the overall, it's a part of the puzzle, okay? Your supplements are going to, that will help in recovery, are going to be things like your protein powder, right? It's a quick, almost instant source of protein that's quickly digestible and can get assimilated very fast. Then we also have the other supporting roles, okay, which is creatine. Yes, you can take creatine in as a woman. No, it's not a steroid. And glutamine, again, same thing. Glutamine is an amino acid. This is also going to help exponentially with your recovery and repair. Glutamine is one that you can take forever and ever and ever, and it has so many great health benefits. Aside from the recovery piece of it, it also has some really great GI benefits. So those are going to be your key focus areas when it comes to building muscle over 40. All right, now we're going to move into some practical tips for you. I know I said it, but I'm going to say it again. All right, I got to keep beating this down, because if you're over on my Instagram, you be knowing, like, I've done a plethora of workout video tutorials on specific exercises, and my go-to phrase is do it right the first time so you don't lift like an asshole. And I remember very early on in my bodybuilding journey, when I hired my first coach, I was training with him 3 days a week in person for a year without a break. And I was very determined. I was like, he says this is what I got to do to compete and, grow my muscles. I'm doing it. So I was all in. And one thing that he pointed out very early on for me was that I had incredible form. And this is not to just be braggadocious, but this is something that I was very passionate about, almost a little bit obsessive. So when I got into, the fitness industry and I started reading magazines before I hired this coach, I would literally rip the pages out of magazines and I would shove them in my backpack and I would take them with me to the gym, because we didn't have smartphones back then, friends. And so I would pull out these workouts and I would read them, and I would literally, like a checklist, make sure that I was following the instructions. And so then when I hired my coach, he gave me a nickname of the formologist. He's like, Diane, you're such a formologist. He's like, I never need to worry about your form, because I was, again, just locked in, and I wanted to make sure that I was doing things right. So that way I wasn't wasting my time. Time is a precious commodity. I don't want to be in the gym just throwing spaghetti at the wall. Okay. So form first. Now, mobility is going to be a piece of this. I know. It's not the best. It's not the most fun. I personally love it. But mobility and your execution are going to be the key ingredients for your body to make change, along with all the other variables I discussed today. But these two things cannot get overlooked. Now, not only is this going to help in terms of muscular development and, building your glutes, this is also going to help you avoid injuries. All right. And again, it's going to maximize your results, which we all want. The second practical tip I have for you is, bitch, just be patient, okay? Because this shit takes time, and you got to be consistent, right? You can't just be like, oh, I was lifting weights for like 2 months and nothing changed. Bitch, that's a drop in the motherfucking bucket of time. Put on your patience panties. I don't know. Wear them with patience and pride. And just know that this is going to take some time, especially if you were over 40. Now, if you think about it from the perspective of, well, this is just what I do, this is going to be part of my health maintenance plan, is to train and lift weights and use that as part of your health and fitness or health and wellness routine, you will be able to enjoy the journey so much more. If you're going into this specifically because you are fixated on the number on the scale and you're obsessed with, fitting into like a specific size, and this is your driving force for your goals, it's going to be short-lived. Now, I will tell you that over 40, again, we are at a disadvantage for this coming so easy as our 20-year-old counterparts. Those bitches. It's coming for them. Don't worry. But I say this because it's a conversation that I have often with women, now a lot on the internet, because I'm doing mostly online group coaching, is, they're just impatient. There's so much impatience. And I'm like, bitch, how long have you neglected your meat suit? You've neglected that shit for years. And now you're pissed off at yourself or your body or my program because you think that this should have reversed everything in 2 or 3 months. It's not how it works, okay? If somebody is selling you snake oil, I'm sorry, you were definitely bamboozled, okay? That's not how it works. I've been in the fitness industry forever. And I'm here to just give you the facts and let you know that this shit takes time. Now, if you are really, really struggling with the hormonal piece of things, you're like, my hormones are all over the place. I wake up drenched in sweat. I have this really uncomfortable menopause belly, all of the side effects and symptoms that appear when you start to enter menopause or you're already in menopause. Something you might want to consider is looking into getting an hormonal consult with somebody who specializes in hormonal therapy, an integrative physician that has some education around hormones and preventative health and things of that nature is my preference. I have not had the best luck with our healthcare. It's more of like they just want to slap a Band-Aid and just throw some pills at you. And that's not my shtick. I prefer to know why things are happening, understanding my body, getting my blood work, looking over it, seeing what's happening. What natural things can I do? What supplements can I maybe add in that aren't going to have these crazy side effects? What lifestyle changes do I need to start making, right? It's better overall for your health to attack it from a lifestyle perspective than let me just shove a bunch of shit in my body. Okay. Now, if you don't have a hormone specialist, I do have several that we refer our clients out to, just depending on a couple different factors. So if you're interested, find me, friend. I answer all my socials. I answer my DMs. I answer, the lovely trolls on YouTube who want to talk shit. I'm all over the place. So just send me a message and I can give you some recommendations. I'll probably have a couple questions for you. All right. That's all I have for you today on this episode of Boss Bitch Radio on how to build your glutes over 40 and things to consider. Now, I like you a great deal. I want to save you from pancake ass and having a back that just runs all the way down, right? Like just a back, no butt. That's a thing. I want to save you from that. Not because I think you look bad, but I think your overall quality of life will be so much better if you focus on your strength training. So my 7-day glute challenge is just a taste of what strength training is like, but I want you to see with your own 2 eyes how this looks practically, right? With a program, with a coach who designed it, who has worked with thousands of women's bodies. And it will give you great insight as to 1, are you training hard enough? 2, are you training frequently enough? 3, are you doing enough within your workouts to actually produce change? So these things are a big eye opener for a lot of women that come through our glute challenge. And they're like, oh, now I know what I was doing wrong. And it's like light bulb. So there's obviously 0 strings attached anytime, but after the glute challenge, we will be opening up our 12-week program. If you're interested, you will be offered an option with a discount if you participate in the glute challenge. So get yourself on the list. We start August the 26th. Again, if you're listening to this later, drop your name on that wait list because that shit's coming around again. She's coming around the mountain. And you will get an email every single day so you know exactly what to do. And then we have the community of the Boss Bitch besties who are also doing it as well in the private Facebook group. If you don't have Facebook, no worries. My app also has a chat function. And let me tell you, it's a party in there too. Like the girls are just cheering each other on and it's lots of fun. I actually am very honored to have this community. So hopefully this episode was of value to you. Listen, if you've made it this far, you're the real MVP. And I'm going to ask you for a favor. If you're over here on the YouTubes, can you just hit that subscribe button? I mean, let's be friends with benefits. You'll get benefits by subscribing every time a new episode drops. If you're not listening over on the YouTubes and you're on Spotify, Apple, any of those platforms, the way that the podcast grows is by sharing and opening it up for other people so that way more besties can join in the booty building breakthroughs. So do me a favor. If you're not driving, grab the link to this episode, copy that shit, paste it into your bestie chat. I know you got a bestie chat. I have a bestie chat with my besties. Put it in there and be like, you bitches need to listen to this. You old ass bitches, listen to this shit. That's how we talk to each other. We don't really mean it though. We love each other. Okay, that's all I have for you. I love you. Thanks for being here.